Welcome back to another episode of To Be Fair. Namaste, Payo Beno. Amai Sanket, and today we will be discussing what's funny. How can you know that something is funny versus that's not funny, that's offensive, versus, I can understand why that's funny.
Yeah.
And I guess this was kind of prompted by the whole controversy around Dave Chappelle.
Yeah.
And his, potential cancellation or...
Yeah, no, you can't cancel it. I watched a recent video, today, where he responded to the closer controversy on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And, he's just talking about stuff. And in the end, he says, am I cancelled? The whole crowd goes, no. Well, that's a separate thing. Like,
but I guess that, begs the question, like, what is funny?
Yeah.
And, is there an objective funny, or is it only always subjective? And if that's the case, why is there so much uproar when certain comedians, offend a certain group versus, other comedians? Is it also, I'm just talking out loud here, but are all these questions dependent on the level of comedian you are? And because Dave Chappelle has such a wide reach, because of that, you're cancelled, you're not allowed. Versus if, the guy in the pub was to make the same jokes, no one would care because it's the guy in the pub.
Well, it's funny you mentioned guy in the pub, because he is basically making the jokes that you would make in a friend circle where you're like, oh, no one's going to find out about this. Because he's got balls. And he's not, like, I'll just talk about Chappelle, he's not like he's trying to offend. He said it a few specials ago, right? And I said this to you, I'm not saying these things to be mean, I'm saying them because they're funny.
Yeah.
And that's why you come back to your thing of what is funny.
Yeah.
Well, it's like, it's very subjective. It's like with TV
is.
shows, it's like colours. You all have your own opinion.
I think with comedy, though, at least from my perspective, it's comedians are probably the most, amazing people in terms of commentating about society. And I think things only are funny and hit home if what they're saying has some sort of truth or some sort of,
of course.
And they're through, their delivery or whatever it might be, I think they're making these statements and commentary about the state of how things are. And I think that probably adds to what's funny. Because if they're making a point of like, oh shit, like, oh, that's so true.
Yeah.
People like can relate or they'll laugh, and, that I guess starts that. Okay, that's a bit funny, especially in the way he said it or whatever else.
Yeah, exactly. What's funny, you mentioned like the truth is funny. Little kids, we always laugh at what little kids say, right? Because they're always like, oh, your uncle, he's so fat. And everyone's like, oh God, you can't say that. And it's like, why? Like, kids are funny because there's no filter, right?
Yeah.
And that's something also comedians, or the good comedians anyway. You see the crap ones on like the late night talk show where they're like, I'm going to talk about bread and milk prices. And it's like a PG. It fits into this shit.
Like sometimes it's funny. Like sometimes, like,
but you know what I mean?
haven't heard that, but I'm listening and I'm like, I could laugh at that.
I would. I could laugh at it, but it's like it feels like it's like a basic.
Yeah.
Like you're not really pushing.
Oh well, there's
anything.
tears. There's definitely tears to comedy,
and that's why I think when you mention is there a whole objective funny, maybe that, where it's like you have those talk shows where people just go on for like 2-3 minutes. I know a lot of olden TV shows that comedians was like a big thing. The joke would come on, say a couple of jokes about like, women in the kitchen, ha ha ha, and like male jokes back then. And it's like everyone's like, oh, this is hilarious, because then it was very like streamlined. Only a few people could talk on TV. Now it's like anyone with a camera can talk, right? Yeah. So anyone can say whatever. So you have more reach.
Yeah.
And you listen to people who you understand. Like Russell Peters was my first comedian.
Oh, I love Russell Peters so much.
I'm not a fan of him anymore because I realize he does the same thing all the time.
For sure.
Which, like Bruno Mars is
well, that's his niche. Like,
that's and that's why I like Chappelle so much, because I watched his earlier. Yeah. And now and
that means like
he's got balls.
Like even outside of balls though, like I think Chappelle does talk about really important issues sometimes, and his commentary on society I think really is important to note, and I don't think
you need a voice.
Just because, and look, I get it. I feel like if you were a trans person experiencing what they experience and, coming from their perspective, I can completely understand and appreciate why you might feel like, this is punching down, or, this is, allowing for the violence that we face every day. And I can understand that because if I put myself in their shoes and think about, for example, if there was a white person just making a whole sketch or a whole thing about fucking brown people and Indian and Nagari, like I would not find that funny. I'd be like, that's not done tastefully and that's not funny and you're part of the problem. So I don't necessarily, I'm not there, but I can completely understand the pushback. That being said, I'm not sure if that's case to cancel or to say that's not funny objectively or whatever else.
That's why that whole cancel was so stupid. It's like, I don't like what you're saying. I don't want to listen to you. But don't listen to him then. I get that you raise a good point. It's like, it reaches, like Chappelle's so big, it reaches a lot of people. A lot of people might think, oh no, trans people are bad. But it's like, he's not saying they're bad. It's like you said, tastefully done. If you actually listen to what he's saying, a lot of his jokes, like I said, they're really like shocking commentary on society. It's like, oh god, policemen are beating up these people, but he said it in a way that's funny. I can laugh at this, and a lot of other people are doing it. A few Aussie comedians who were just like saying, if you know Neil,
Neil,
he's a few recent years he's got some like
for sure
podcasts and videos where he's talking about literally like telling Muslim jokes to like Muslims in the audience,
for sure,
as an example, and I like that. And maybe because I'm so used to and I'm so bored of the bread and milk jokes. It's like, that's funny, but it's like you said, the truth is funnier.
I think I'm torn because I like Dave Chappelle and I watch his specials and I think he's hilarious. I think the last special wasn't too funny and we talked about that because I think it was different in the sense that he was like, answering certain
more like a
controversies.
Conclusion of an essay or something.
But the one before that, I think Sticks and Stones or whichever one, like that was like, so I don't know exactly where I stand because I love him, but I do get it. I do understand it in the sense of
from the community.
or just any marginalized or whatever, like in the sense of
course,
like you're adding to the rhetoric that can be dangerous or can be an issue if it's not then contextualized as Dave Chappelle's comedy, but if it's just mainstream. And especially now where they're so polarized where, yes, cancel versus, you snowflakes. I think because there's so much arguments that could then lead to like, the neo-Nazis or whatever else then being like,
which
and
probably already
taking it.
That's the thing.
I can understand it. Like, because look, again, I'll go back to TikTok. And I sent you that TikTok. It's just not the actual
the brown
TikTok.
guy?
The two brown guys that were like, making those like really heavy Indian accents and, a lot of brown people were like, what are you doing? Like, that's not funny. Like,
Well, the brown people doing it was not funny then.
Yeah. And, but then a lot of the comments of like white people like, get over it. Oh, you guys are so funny. And so that again begs the question of like, it's funny to these white people when, these brown people making fun of brown people, but brown people are like, that's not funny. You're just adding to this rhetoric
You're part of the problem.
Yeah. But then it's like, all right, then where do you draw that? What's the answer? I don't know. Like,
it is, and like maybe it's like a sub point where you mentioned like the snowflakes and the cancel people. I don't know if this word exists anymore. The respectable disagreeing.
Oh no.
I don't think that word exists anymore. And that's what I'm just a naive person, but I would love for that to be society. People like the trans community might be like, oh, okay, we hear your opinion. Obviously, you're making a lot of jokes. You've got a few serious points in there. And I think, maybe in the shows it's not coming as across, but that video where he responded, he's saying that, no, I'm not trying to poke fun. Like, I'm not trying to like punch down on you. I'm just poking fun. You can do the same to me respectfully. You don't have to come in and start cancelling me, threatening to take all of my special.
But I guess just without then going in this rabbit hole of controversy, but like, what is funny? Is there a funny?
What do you mean?
Just because I
think
we were talking about Amy Schumer because I guess we're because we talked about it.
So now we're talking about what's not funny. To us, I bet there's someone here.
People find it funny. How is she getting all these Netflix specials? All these people, and people do find it funny.
No, they do.
I remember
I researched a bit.
No, there was a dinner
She's big for a
I
reason.
went to, and I was like and I was telling them like, You find her funny. She's not funny.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
And everyone was so like, she's funny.
Oh, so you were the minority in that.
It was a big group of women.
Interesting.
So,
Well, that's okay.
no, but so that, I guess, so that's what I mean. So maybe for women in the Western world, maybe actually Amy Schumer and her comedy is funny.
Is it?
But to me, I just
I don't
feel
want to
like
speak on women. I know women hate
no,
that.
but I
so
just
I'm
like
good.
I listen to her stuff and I'm like,
Yeah, I didn't find it funny at all.
this is just, I don't know. Am
But
I
that's
missing something?
That's not
I don't
because you
understand
hate
it.
women and you don't think women are funny.
No, I
Yeah.
think like so many
Yeah.
women comedians are absolutely
Exactly.
amazing.
So that's just to clarify. We're not like
Oh
fucking
no,
pigs like
no,
that.
no. I mean,
Yeah.
we're Sigma males, so
Yeah,
we're
that's right. I forgot that word. I like that. We should call it Sigma males. But yeah, that's
Yeah,
interesting.
so what is funny? So is that just how do you where is that like line?
Line is interesting. I feel it's so subjective. It's like, well, I think it's basically you can make fun of anything that the mainstream audience agrees with. That's what it is. Let's be honest. That's what. If you watched Eddie Murphy stand up from the 80s and 90s,
No, I haven't.
Okay, so I'm really into like comedy and like the comedian thing you mentioned. Like I want to try that out before this lockdown hit. He was talking about this police. Like just an example. He was referencing like gays at that time, or how he said then in the 80s, fags. Right? He said that on stage. It wasn't a big deal. I don't think at the time it was a big deal. And he's like, oh, I didn't realize there was a fire truck, but the sirens are broken, so they put a bunch of gays on top of the fire truck and started going, wee, 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 wee. It's funny, right? You're laughing.
Yeah.
It's not we're having a go against like gay people. It's like, that's a funny, he's made a comment.
He's observed. And he's
Observation.
made that comment
People
on that
who make
observation.
observations, and I don't want to like toot my own horn, but
Yeah.
that's
No,
why
but-
people find me funny sometimes. 'Cause
Well-
I observe things like, oh, that's true.
Well, I think that's what we're talking about, where the comedians are the commentators of
Yeah,
society,
they
where
just
they're just
sit
like,
and look.
yeah, they're observing and they're.
I don't think there's anyone there who's like spreading hate
No,
through
but
comedy.
I think
I don't
though,
think. It's
I
like you said before, the groups might take Chappelle. Neo-Nazi people might be like, oh, Chappelle's our leader. He's like, no, I don't want that. Just
yeah,
because a
but-
couple of jokes I made.
But I think it's just it's one of those things where it's
not
so
easy.
hard. It's so
not easy.
hard, yeah.
Which is becoming part of this podcast. We don't really know. But, so yeah, people find it funny because people find Amy Schumer funny.
People find
People find Dave Chappelle funny.
people find so many,
And vice versa. People don't find Dave Chappelle funny.
Nah.
People don't find Schumer.
and it's you're the first person we were talking about Norm Macdonald, where you are the first real life person that first knew who he was and found him funny as well.
Yeah.
I
Oh, really?
love him so much, especially on
Rest in peace. As well.
it's the talk shows where he goes on and just does his skits of like him being in the closet.
Great.
Like, oh my!
Maybe then it's
funniest thing.
You would say that him and Chappelle will be like close
I
in
don't
terms of
know.
comedy.
I don't
Do you
know.
like? So, for example, funny example.
He's so
on air.
niche though. He's
Yeah.
so odd.
He is.
He's so odd. He was odd. He's
Like Bill Burr. Do you like Bill Burr?
I do like Bill Burr.
Yeah. Are we just like fans of comedians who just push the boundaries then?
I don't know.
Because, like, think about it like this. Growing up, you have your regimented TV shows, fairly left wing. Nowadays, it's obviously changing. You can view whatever you want. And maybe we see comedians who are, like, talking absolute opposite to that. And they're not punching down, but they're like, like Bill Burr had a thing where he's like, I don't know if you've seen it, the women, there's no reason to hit a woman.
Maybe keep going.
seen
Like
that
I've seen
one?
like
Yeah.
random clips.
Oh yeah, it's like it's a little thing we talked about. There's no reason to hit a woman. Where he watches a talk show, being like, women are like, no, you cannot hit a woman. There's no absolutely no, there's no reason to hit a woman. And he's like, what kind of stupid comment is that? And the whole audience is quiet, right? The whole time he's speaking, and he's like, I'm not saying I want to hit a woman. I'm saying women beaters are bad, right? But he's like, the fact that you can say there's no reason.
Oh yeah, I've seen that one.
He's like,
actually,
there's plenty of
and the way
fucking
he
re-
says, no.
And the audience is still awkward. That whole special, they're like, oh, ha, ha, and then they get quiet again. And he's like, am I speaking something stupid? I acknowledge that people beat words terrible.
Yeah.
But the fact that you can't question it, it's like people get triggered, right?
Yeah, no. Bill Burr is again a good like meta commentator where he then commentates on
Exactly.
the like
And it's not like he goes
yeah.
home and beats his wife or anything.
No,
But it's that, maybe it's just that we like people who are just looking at society from outside and being like, yes, all this is bad, but why do we have to frame it in such a way? And that's like respectable
but I
disagreeing.
can, in saying that though, like it's just hard because I can see myself in that position where if there was a white person that was just making jokes about brown people, I just don't find that funny.
Okay.
And I just like, it's just like, that's, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
why? It's not. And maybe, again, maybe there's that bias of like, or is it actually that maybe the way they're doing it is distasteful? Like, I don't know.
So
but
then maybe that's what you say, put yourself in those shoes. Maybe that's what someone trans is watching the Chappelle show is feeling as well. They're like, oh, this, I don't like the way he's doing it. This offends me. And he keeps saying like a lot of people in that community have no issues with him. And it's just that it's the corporate interests. So we're like, you can't talk about a controversial topic because we'll stop paying you.
Yeah, well, that's a whole separate.
That's why I mentioned before. It's people who poke fun at mainstream media, the ones who are generally controversial. And mainstream things changes, so it's like if we suddenly like forget everything you knew, and we suddenly thought
mainstream, like
I'm talking
Eddie
about
Murphy,
Project and all
like,
that kind of stuff. But like
Dave Chappelle, that like in millions, like.
But then who
views,
gets
like,
angry? Like it's the parents, right? Do you reckon families are watching like Eddie Murphy?
I think
No.
it's a
Not
vocal
until he did
minority
Daddy
in
Daycare.
everything. I think,
But they're the people who are like saying, no, don't watch it. That's horrible. That's terrible.
but also, are we just behind the times? As being devil's advocate, are we not allowing for progress? The people that are saying it's fine, we shouldn't cancel Dave Chappelle.
Okay.
Because if you think back in terms of, if we think back in the States and segregation, where they then forced white businesses to allow for, black
Patrons and
patrons.
everything.
And then
Yeah,
if we
yeah.
talk about quotas where they allowed, Indigenous, this is how much,
I was going to say, started in Australia, yeah.
all that sort of stuff. Like if back then we were like, oh, what the hell, stop that, that's silly, yada, 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 we would never allowed for the progress to where we are right now. And so is it that maybe we're just behind the eight ball in the terms of, this could be problematic down the line and we need to have some sort of discourse about don't do this in this way. Or,
That's the thing.
I don't know.
I think you need to find out whether he's actually bashing them. Because then, if he's saying like trans people are bad, I don't think he's saying that. I think like he keeps saying, "Watch my special from start to finish."
Oh, sure, yeah, exactly.
I don't think he's actually saying it. People can put words and twist
of course.
them. So if there's someone out there spreading hate, being like trans is bad, like saying all this kind of shit, then you'd reckon we're not stupid. Public will be ready to recognize.
But can we just? I mean, but,
so you made some good points. I feel
no,
like
but
that-
also because public, it's so hard because there's also Steven Crowder. I don't know if you know him.
No.
He's like a
Comedian?
right-wing comedian kind of person.
Okay.
And he does the change my mind segments on campuses on YouTube. He just like sits on a campus, has a table.
Oh,
like,
that guy.
Change
Oh,
my
that's
mind.
him.
Yeah.
I don't. Oh, okay.
I got into it because of that, and I'm like, oh,
brave man.
great, interesting points, yada yada yada. But then, the more I actually watched him, he's like a comedian, and
Yeah.
it's not funny, and he does these kind of things of like, in a way that is distasteful and is like, this is
okay.
not okay. So I think you're right in that you probably could tell, but also
Yeah.
he has an amazing big following
Of
that
course he
people
does.
that probably don't care about that. So
That's
then
the thing. Why should
where-
they?
But should they? Should they not?
No, but as in for them. Like,
No,
why
but that's
should
what I'm
they?
saying. But then
But
maybe
they-
that's us here.
Does that mean you have to regulate comedy? And that I think that's what everyone's scared of. Like you mentioned with the Chappelle, should we just regulate what you can say? As soon as that happens, you can't comedy is the only place where free speech exists anymore.
It's such a hard thing.
And
though.
this, but there's a reason this is not popping off.
Well,
Like you know what I mean?
I do.
You can't say anything nowadays.
That's not necessarily true. But I get what you're saying.
I meant without just sending it out there and being like, I'm happy.
No, yeah, I get what you're saying.
Talking. I think the best is easiest to just talk with people because online you get idiots anyway, right? Whenever you talk with someone who you don't agree with, you tend to not have that many heated arguments because you're listening to them, you see them.
For sure.
Whereas online you can hide behind a keyboard.
But I mean,
or
I'm just going to
laptop.
take it back though, because I guess
Yeah,
we're
take it
going
back. We are
to a more
going.
deeper
Sorry,
place.
I've got a lot of.
But like Amy Schumer,
Oh, yeah. I don't know why.
how is it? I don't
I
know.
respect her though. Like, get your money, well done.
No, but
Fucking good work.
so is that then just funny? So is it just dependent on?
Well, she is a comedian, and
But
people
she's
find
not
her funny.
She's
To
not
you, and to me. But doesn't mean she's not funny.
No, of course. But I'm saying, so then what is funny?
That's what. Back to the thing. It's subjective.
So there is no.
There's no overall funny thing apart from a man getting hit in the balls with a football. I think everyone in the world.
I don't think I find that
finds
funny.
it. You don't find that funny? Oh
I
shit!
kind of cringe. I feel
Oh, you
hurt
feel
when I
scared?
see
Oh,
it.
okay.
When that
How
happens,
about
I'm
people
like,
like falling down when they're walking? Instant karma videos. You don't think that's funny?
I don't find that funny.
Oh damn! Okay.
Sometimes, sometimes I don't know.
We're if anything, we're exaggerating our point, or my point anyway, that there is no overlapping funny.
What is funny?
It's up to you.
No, but
It's
like, what
the
is
way
funny?
you were.
Is funny then a response then? Is it just like
Yes.
I found X funny, but X isn't funny in of itself? So is funny
No.
more of a response? Like I'm finding this humorous versus that is actually
Yeah.
humorous.
Well, it's like the same with fucking soldier returning home videos. Have you seen them?
and then like the little kid hugs them and stuff.
Yeah, and it was like this sad music, and everyone's like, "Oh man, the onions, I'm so sad." And then the other comments being like, "Oh yeah, people have just come home after killing 1,000 people. Yeah, this is so heartwarming,
Yeah,
right?" That's
a whole different.
no, but that's just to make your point
Yeah.
of people find that sad, people don't find it sad.
Yeah.
So it is probably just a funny bone, right? It's a response.
It's a response then. So
Yeah.
then
There probably is one thing that's overlappingly funny, which is hard to think of it. Like a baby laughing. That's cute. Everyone's that's
I think is this the society and the culture that you're in, and I think it's because you see a lot of old
Exactly.
British shows. That's just, to me like not funny. But then
yeah, and
back in the day, that would be hilarious.
the
It's
Indian thing you mentioned.
cultural and
I don't know if you watch what's Aziz's show on Netflix. It's a really good show.
the
I
loved
loved it.
one.
It's like little season where it's like little cute, like he has
Yeah.
little friends. That show where he's like, that one episode was, the sun's out now. One episode where they're going through these Indian characters in American TV, and it's all white guys with Indian accents. And a lot of them, I was like, ooh, this is not good. I thought of it, oh, it's like,
I actually
hello,
found that funny, yeah.
toku, toku, toku. And the whole audience is laughing. I was like, ha, ha, ha. Put that on now. You'll get, what's that, cancelled, whatever word. Because it's, like I said, what's the mainstream finds funny,
But see,
that's what they laugh at.
I'm gonna just
Back then it was fine. Back then it was fine to laugh at
My
gays
last-
on the top of the roof.
My last point is
Okay.
no, but I'm just gonna say I'm confused and conflicted because
I've become more confused.
I feel like if you were to show that even now to just a random person that's in his bubble that's white, he still might find
of
that
course.
funny.
No, I'm not saying that's not
No, but
totally not funny. I'm saying I didn't find it.
No, but I'm saying so even now, but then we could know, as I guess this whole channel and stuff is about uplifting our people and brownness and whatever else intertwined with everything else. But we then say no, that's not funny, etc., etc. We advocate for that. So then now are we trying to, like you say, make that line of that's hurtful, that's not funny, versus that used to be funny? Like how does that?
Yeah, that's the thing. That's what you mentioned with the transgender comments with Chappelle. Maybe in 10, 15 years we'll be like, oh no, that was a bit
Yeah, so maybe we
outdated.
are.
But it's still funny because I still laughed at the Eddie Murphy thing, even though it's like, oh man, that's so bad. I shouldn't be laughing. But you laugh because it's like you've been told not to laugh. It's obviously mean, but it's not like outwardly horrible. I think the whole comedians, like, they make a joke about serious things.
I think,
and if it's that's the difference. I think if it's done well and if it's not done well,
I think for your Eddie, because I haven't seen that clip,
they should
but
watch.
when I think about that, I find it funny because then I'm actually questioning and thinking, and this might even get us cancelled. But a lot of
sure.
a lot of like I guess gay men who I guess are more feminized and have those outward behaviors. To me, because I guess I'm haven't been educated in that way, I find it a little bit confusing in the sense of why is that the presentation or the the prototype of that a lot of people in that group, and then that makes me kind of like it's true and it's interesting and it's funny because then he's, like you say, made that commentary. So maybe it's hard.
Yeah, I think we made a point somewhere in there.
I don't know.
I think just before what we're saying.
I'm sure there's a lot of hidden gems in this whole thing.
It's funny to you. What is funny to me is it's clearly different. There is
no objective
what is funny.
anything really.
Yeah.
But
Anything and nothing is funny.
so we still don't know whether Dave Chappelle should be cancelled or not, but
Oh God, no! Well, my opinion. First off, he can't get cancelled. I think he's one of the people who's like, if you keep trying, it's like holding sand. The more you try and cancel, the bigger he gets. Because there's so many people in support of him. He's like, no, we need that.
I think
voice.
he's funny. Like,
Oh,
I
he's
think,
hilarious.
he might have some bad takes, or he might have some things like, I'm like, ooh, like,
He's not bulletproof.
that's not,
He's not bulletproof.
yeah, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
that wasn't funny. But then I think overall, he's funny.
Yeah.
And you should probably maybe allow him to be funny.
Yeah,
And, maybe even just educate himself, learn if there are problems, whatever.
That's the
But
thing.
yeah,
I think they're having a meeting soon. It'll be very interesting.
a meeting.
Him and the community. He asked them,
Oh, really?
come meet me.
Oh.
You should watch that video when he responds. Yeah, it's good. Anyway, I think that was one of my favorite. We zoomed through that.
And
We
I can't
still
remember
don't know.
anything we talked about or what we
That's right.
came
That's
to.
your
but,
job to find out, audience.
hopefully by this time, 10 subscribers.
Yeah,
'Cause,
a bit too,
Just look it up.
we did 5 in a week, and now we're doing 1 in a month. So
Some eloquently spoken,
sun's out.
very, very photogenic brown men.
Except my pimple.
Our
here.
faces are glowing. Our voices are resonating. We're just... Why would you not subscribe?
Yeah, geez, I feel like I have to.
That's a take.
All right, see you guys.